we're not talking about vernacular Arabic. So, for example, there's always this tension in Middle Eastern countries between sort of, classical Arabic and vernacular Arabic. There is a notion that the language of the Quran, the sacred language, cannot be translated. Because translation, of course, entails crossing borders. As Louis said, there's always a transgressive quality to every act of translation. How do we put an end to the possibility of that transgression? By declaring something so sacred, which also means secret, because there's an etymological connection between sacredness and secrecy, right? It's so inaccessible, so distant, as to be beyond the possibility of any kind of translation. And I think this is a quality that you can find in all monotheism. It's not just Islam. You have to remember Christianity until the Protestant Reformation, it sort of sacralized Latin as a sacred language of God. Because of the Protestant Reformation, and subsequently valid into the Bible and the afterwards on that. So yeah, there is untranslatability. Always conveys, as I said, persistence of difference. Whether that difference is thought of to be a sacred one, to be an attribute of sacredness, or whether it's thought to be an attribute of subversion or a certain kind of resistance or whatever. Right? And I think this goes back to what I mentioned earlier about translation is always predicated on the persistence of untranslatability. It also does show the way in which untranslatability can also be used as an instrument of power. Right? It could be used as a form of mystification. To say that, you're not allowed to say this in any other language, means that only those who have access to that language therefore have the power to decide, have the power to speak, and so forth and so on. So it's a way of monopolizing the means of communication. So untranslatability, like translation, can cut in so many different ways.
There's this remarkable short story in the Plan of Rafael entitled Game. And in this story, the American soldier, G.I., when Clay gets into comes into this Bible, and there's a teacher, I think you know him, somebody. But there's this teacher who teaches this boy, grade school. And the boy, the story is narrated from the point of view of not quite articulated in English, but getting there slowly, thanks to the benign teacher who gives him lessons in grammar, etc. But the teacher and Clay get into some kind of romantic friendship. And at one moment, the little boy admires his teacher and sort of it's some kind of affection for him. And the story goes on, but the boy comes to this point, a realization that soldier Clay had actually gotten the teacher in the right way and sort of had her for his pleasure. And he's writing that speaks all about a kind of a space, according to post-colonial space. You have your culture, you have your language, and there's Clay representing the other culture, representing another language. And then I remember this driver, the name grade school, a refreshment sign during those days. And this driver was listening into a group of boys playing and speaking straight English. He was like looking at them and he saying, after that he goes, hello, how are you? How are you? And I said, so I look at this and then the driver's bitter, macaroni kind of tone about how this young kids are sort of forgotten the language of English, etc. And always mixed up. Kind of thinking about it. But I want you to make a comment about that voice space.
The post-colonial space. I have to think about it. Maybe we talk about it later. Something like that. This event.
First of all, I'd like to say that I've always been kind of concerned about church. So I was really struck by your piece and how like, for example, you mentioned that some of the US soldiers say that the translators are their eyes and ears on the field, but at the same time they can't trust them. So in effect, they are saying they cannot trust their own senses, but they're saying something around their senses.
That's a very good observation.
So, and when I connected it to what you said, to your point about David, how one of its translations is the confusion of languages, and the other one is the gate, I believe the gateway. It just struck me that there's a parallel there. That at first, you need these translators in order to be united, in order to understand the Iraqi people. But at the same time, their faithfulness and unfaithfulness renders them, shall we say, untrustworthy.
Yeah. Traitors. Yeah.
Traitors.
Traidor.
Yes, yes. And a comment I'd like to make about your parallel to the chicken and egg question, which came first. I was thinking, how come the answer can't be both? I mean, you translate, is it because you translate because of the translatability or the translatability? I think for me, it's both. One cannot go without the other. I mean, for example, if we just consider the untranslatability of something, like, if I'm not mistaken, the Greeks, they had more than one word for love. If you're fixated on the fact that it is untranslatable, then you would not attempt to translate it anymore. However, if you are fixated on the fact that it is translatable, then it loses all its meaning when it is translatable. So I believe that it is not which comes first, but as with I think as with all things of dual nature, like how light is both matter and wave light.